Okay, so we've got a really interesting set of materials in front of us today, and they all kind of seem to be hitting on this same core theme.
Yeah, and what is that theme exactly?
Well, it's all about how to make your marketing and sales efforts way more targeted, right? How to make sure you're bringing in those really high quality leads and just making every single move count when it comes to efficiency and making the most of your resources.
Ah, okay, got it. So basically less wasted effort and more bang for your
Yeah.
buck, right? Getting that maximum impact.
Exactly. And from what I'm seeing here in these materials, it looks like the big key to all of that is this thing called the ideal customer profile, or ICP for short.
Oh, the ICP. Yeah, I've heard of that. But isn't that just like, a fancy way of saying who you think your customers are?
It's definitely more than just a hunch, that's for sure. It's like taking a super close look at the customers who actually get the most out of what you're offering.
And I'm guessing it's also about figuring out which customers are the most valuable to you in return, right? Not just who's buying, but who's buying and really sticking around and growing with you.
You got it. And the cool thing is, these materials actually give us a step-by-step guide on how to define this ICP in a really detailed way, and then how to actually go out and find those companies that fit the profile.
Okay, so it's not just theory. It's about getting really practical and identifying those companies that are out there right now, ready to benefit from what you have to offer.
Absolutely. And that's what we're going to do today. Take a deep dive into all of this and really pull out the most valuable, actionable insights for everyone listening.
I like it. A deep dive. So what exactly are we hoping to accomplish today? What should people expect to walk away with?
I'd say the big goal here is to understand how focusing on the right customers, not just any customers, can make a huge difference in your growth.
And we're not talking about just any kind of growth, right? It's about that sustainable growth that keeps going strong.
Exactly. The kind of growth that comes from having really solid relationships with customers who love what you do and who are going to stick around for the long haul.
And the materials we've got here, they actually lay out some pretty exciting potential outcomes from getting this whole ICP thing right.
Oh, yeah, they definitely do. They talk about how you can start seeing much better results from your marketing and sales efforts, like hitting the bullseye way more often with your campaigns.
Right. And also getting a much steadier flow of those high-quality leads that actually have a good chance of turning into paying customers.
And then, of course, there's the whole efficiency angle, which I know is huge for so many businesses these days. Being smarter with your resources, your time, your budget, everything.
So basically working smarter, not harder, right?
Exactly. All right, so let's jump into the very first step here, which is defining your ideal customer profile. And from what I'm seeing here, it's not just a matter of saying, oh, we sell to, medium-sized businesses or something vague like that.
Oh, no, no, no. This has got to be way more specific. You need to really get into the nitty-gritty details.
Exactly. The sources are super clear about that. They say a really effective ICP is like a detailed blueprint. It's based on real data, not just assumptions or gut feelings.
Data-driven, huh? Sounds serious.
It is. You're basically letting your best customers tell you who your next best customers should be. It's all right there in your CRM.
Okay, so we're talking about looking at your existing customers, the ones who are already doing really well with your products or services.
Exactly. And then figuring out what they have in common, what makes them tick, what kind of patterns emerge among those top performers.
And I guess the big question is, why go through all this trouble to nail down this ICP in the first place? What's the payoff?
Well, think of it this way. Are you better off just scattering seeds everywhere and hoping something grows? Or carefully planting those seeds in the most fertile soil where they have the best chance of thriving?
Okay, I see where you're going with this. So the ICP is like finding that fertile soil for your business.
You got it. A well-defined ICP lets you focus all your energy on the customers who are the absolute best fit for what you do.
So it's about finding the customers who are not only going to get the most out of your product or service, but who are also the most likely to stick around, right?
Exactly. They're the ones who are going to be the most valuable to your business in the long run, the ones who are going to help you grow and succeed.
Okay, that makes sense. So when we're talking about defining this ICP, what are some of the things we should be looking at? What kind of details matter?
Well, the materials mention a bunch of key areas. First off, there's the industry a company operates in. That's a big one, obviously.
Right, because you might do really well with tech companies, but not so well with, say, retail companies or vice versa.
Exactly. And then there's the size of the company. And one of the sources even gives an example of a manufacturing company that targets businesses with anywhere from 200 employees up to huge enterprises with over 1,000 employees.
Wow, that's quite a range. And then I'm guessing revenue matters too, right? How much money are these companies bringing in?
Absolutely. They actually give an example range of 50 million to 500 million in annual revenue. And of course, you can't forget about location.
Location, location, location,
Right.
right. Some businesses might only operate in certain regions or countries.
Exactly. Like in one of the examples, they specifically mention focusing on the DACH countries, which is Germany, Austria, and Switzerland.
Okay, so we're getting a good picture of the basic demographics of these ideal customers.
Yeah.
But it sounds like it goes deeper than that, right?
Oh, yeah, it definitely does. It's not just about those surface level details. You also need to understand how these companies operate, what their internal processes are like.
Right, because a company with a really complex sales cycle might need a different approach than a company that makes quick buying decisions.
Exactly. And this is where the data-driven part comes in again. The sources really stress that you need to analyze your existing customer base and look for patterns.
So we're talking about digging into your sales history, any insights you have in your CRM, your customer relationship management system.
Exactly. You're looking for those common threads that link your most successful customers together. What makes them stand out? What are their shared characteristics?
Okay, so you're not just making guesses. You're actually looking at the evidence, the data, to see what's already working for you.
Exactly. And once you've done that analysis and you have a really clear, specific ICP defined, the benefits start to ripple out across different teams.
Oh, how so?
Well, for starters, your marketing team can create much more personalized and effective campaigns because they know exactly who they're talking to.
Right, because if you know that your ideal customer is a tech company with a certain size and revenue, and they're located in, say, the US, you can tailor your messaging to speak directly to them.
Exactly. And then on the sales side, your teams can focus their energy on the prospects who are actually the most likely to convert into paying customers.
No more wasting time chasing after leads that are never going to go anywhere.
Exactly. And even your product team can benefit because they gain valuable insights into what those ideal customers really need and want, which can help them develop even better products and services.
So it's a win-win-win across the board.
Yeah.
Everybody benefits from having this clearly defined ICP.
Absolutely. And that's just the beginning. The sources also talk about how you can take this whole thing even further by segmenting the market within your ICP.
Wait, so we're talking about breaking down your already ideal customer profile into even smaller, more specific groups.
Exactly. It's like going from a wide-angle lens to a zoom lens, getting even more focused and granular.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Why would you want to do that? What's the advantage of going that deep?
Well, the main reason is that it allows you to really tailor your messaging and your outreach to resonate with each specific segment.
So instead of sending out the same generic message to everyone in your ICP, you can create different versions that speak directly to the unique needs and challenges of each smaller group.
Exactly. And the materials give some really cool examples of how this might play out in the real world. Like, let's say you find out that a company in your ICP is planning to expand their operations into a new region.
Okay, so maybe they're going international or something like that.
Exactly. Well, that could mean they might need services like relocation assistance for their employees or translation services for their marketing material.
Ah, I see. You can anticipate their needs based on those specific events or changes happening within the company.
Exactly. And the same logic applies to other situations. Like if a company is rapidly growing their headcount, they might be in the market for new HR solutions.
Or if they're upgrading their tech stack, they might need help with integrations or finding new software that works with their existing systems.
You got it. And even something like moving into a new office space could create opportunities. They might need new furniture, new hardware, all sorts of things.
And it can get even more granular than that, right? Like if they're hiring a bunch of data scientists, that could be a sign that they need help managing large volumes of data.
Absolutely. It's like becoming a detective, looking for those subtle clues that reveal what a company needs and wants.
And I guess the more specific you can get, the more effective your messaging and outreach will be, right?
Exactly. You're not just saying, hey, we can help you with your business. You're saying, hey, we know you're expanding into Asia, and we have the perfect solutions to support your relocation and translation needs.
Ah, okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So it's all about personalization and relevance. And I'm guessing tools can help with this whole segmentation process.
Oh, absolutely. They mentioned that CRM systems and data analytics platforms can be super helpful for analyzing your existing customer data and identifying those patterns and triggers that help you create those more refined segments.
So technology can really lend a hand here, especially when you're dealing with lots of data.
Definitely. Okay, so let's say you've defined your ICP. You've even gone a step further and segmented it into smaller groups. But how do you know if you've actually got it right?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
We don't want this to just be a theoretical exercise.
Mm,
We need to make sure it's grounded in reality.
exactly. And that's where this crucial step of validation comes in. The sources really emphasize how important it is to compare your nicely defined ICP against your actual real-world customers, especially your most successful ones.
So it's like checking your work, making sure that the profile you've created actually matches up with the people who are already finding success with your products or services.
Exactly. And they recommend a couple of key methods for doing this. One is to conduct surveys and interviews with your top-performing customers.
So you're going straight to the source, talking to the people who are already your biggest fans and asking them about their experiences.
Exactly. Ask them about their biggest challenges, what they love about your solution, why they chose you over the competition. That direct feedback is incredibly valuable.
Makes sense. You're getting firsthand insights from the people who matter most. And what's the other method they mentioned?
The other key method is to take a deep dive into your customer success stories and case studies.
Ah, those classic examples of how your products or services have helped real companies achieve real results.
Exactly. And as you're reviewing those case studies, look for those common threads, those recurring traits among your most successful customers. What industries are they in? What's their company size? What specific pain points did you help them solve?
So you're looking for those patterns that reinforce or maybe even challenge your initial ICP definition.
Exactly. It's a continuous loop of feedback and refinement. You define your ideal, you validate it against reality, and then you tweak it as needed to make it even more accurate and effective over time.
So it's not a one-and-done thing. It's a living, breathing document that evolves as you learn more and more about your customers.
Exactly. Okay, so now to really bring this whole thing to life, the sources actually provide a super detailed example of an ICP for a manufacturing company.
Oh, cool. A real-world example. Let's
Mhm.
hear it.
All right, so this example really helps us see how all the pieces come together. They start with the basic demographics of the ideal customer.
Okay, so what kind of manufacturing companies are we talking about here?
Well, they're focused on industries like machinery manufacturing, aerospace, and electronics. And in terms of size, they're looking at companies with anywhere from 200 to over 1,000 employees. And their ideal revenue range is between 50 million and 500 million. And geographically, they're focused on the DACH region, Germany, Austria, and Switzerland.
Okay, so that gives us a pretty good idea of the kind of company they're after. But I'm guessing it goes beyond just those basic details, right?
Oh yeah, they dive much deeper than that. They also look at how these companies operate. So for this particular ICP, they're interested in companies that are using advanced manufacturing technologies, like CNC machining or additive manufacturing.
So they're looking for companies that are on the cutting edge of technology, not those that are stuck in the past.
Exactly. And they're also really interested in companies that have a strong focus on sustainability, especially those that are actively trying to reduce their carbon footprint.
So it's not just about the bottom line. They're also looking for companies that are aligned with their values.
Exactly. Okay, so now let's zoom in even closer and see who the key decision makers are within these companies.
Yeah, because knowing who to talk to is just as important as knowing what kind of company you're targeting.
Absolutely. So in this example, they're looking at roles like the chief operations officer, the head of production, engineering managers, and procurement directors.
So these are the folks who are actually making the big decisions about what products and services to buy.
Exactly. And they also mentioned some other roles that are important for influencing those decisions, like maintenance managers, IT directors, and sustainability officers.
So it's not just about reaching the top dog. It's also about getting buy-in from the people who are on the ground actually using the products or services.
You got it. And they even talk about the key criteria that these decision makers use when they're evaluating solutions. Things like the total cost of ownership, the expected return on investment, reliability, and the quality of after-sales support.
So they're not just looking for the cheapest option. They're looking for value, for a solution that's going to solve their problems and make their lives easier.
Absolutely. Okay, so now let's switch gears for a second and talk about the challenges these ideal manufacturing companies are facing. What are the pain points that are keeping them up at night?
Yeah, because if you can understand their problems, you can start to position your solutions as the answer.
Exactly. So in this example, some of the big pain points they mention are things like improving operational efficiency, reducing downtime and maintenance costs, integrating new technologies, and complying with all those ever-changing regulations.
Wow, those are some serious challenges, and I bet a lot of manufacturing companies can relate to those.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And these are the kind of challenges where the right solution can make a huge difference to their bottom line and their overall success.
So they're highly motivated to find solutions. Now, how about their buying process? What's that like for these companies?
Well, they tend to have a pretty considered approach to buying. The sales cycle can be fairly long, anywhere from 6 to 18 months, and they usually involve multiple stakeholders in the decision.
So it's not a quick, impulsive purchase. They're doing their research, gathering information, and making sure they're making the right choice.
Exactly. And they also tend to prefer direct sales interactions, like having technical consultations and getting on-site product demonstrations.
So they want to see the solution in action, talk to the experts, and really get a feel for how it's going to work for them.
You got it. They're also big on building strong partnerships with their suppliers, and they consume a lot of content, like white papers and case studies, to stay informed.
So it's not just about closing the deal. It's about building long-term relationships and providing ongoing value.
Absolutely. Okay, so now let's zoom out again and look at the big picture. What are the strategic goals these ideal manufacturing companies are working towards?
Yeah, what are their long-term aspirations? Where do they see themselves going?
Well, a lot of them are focused on making significant efficiency improvements, maybe boosting productivity by 10–20% in the next couple of years.
So they're always looking for ways to do more with less, to streamline their operations and increase their output.
Exactly. And they're also big on innovation, investing in cutting-edge technologies to stay ahead of the competition.
It's a fast-moving world, and they need to stay ahead of the curve.
Absolutely. And sustainability is another big one. They might have goals like reducing energy consumption by 15% or reducing waste by 25% within a certain time frame.
So it's not just about profits. They're also thinking about their environmental impact and their social responsibility.
Exactly. And finally, many of them are looking to expand into new markets, which means they need solutions that can scale and adapt to different regions and customer bases.
Okay, so we've got a really clear picture of this ideal customer now, from their demographics to their pain points to their long-term goals. But the next question is, how do we actually find these companies in the real world?
Right. We can't just sit around and wait for them to come knocking on our door. We need to go out and find them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And luckily, the sources actually provide some really practical guidance on how to do that. They specifically mention a tool called Dealfront Target.
Okay, Dealfront Target, what's that all about?
Well, it's essentially a platform that lets you search for and identify companies that match your ICP.
So you're not just browsing the internet or hoping to stumble across the right companies. You're using a tool that's specifically designed to find those perfect fit businesses.
Exactly. And the goal here is to build a highly targeted list of companies that are not only a good fit for what you offer, but are also very likely to get real value from your products or services.
So you're increasing your chances of success right from the start. You're not wasting time on companies that are never going to be interested.
Exactly. And they outline two main methods for doing this using Dealfront Target. The first method is all about leveraging the power of filters.
Filters, like what you use on a website to narrow down your search results.
Exactly. But in this case, you're using filters to narrow down your search for ideal customers. So you can input all those key ICP characteristics we talked about earlier as search criteria.
So like if we're sticking with that manufacturing example, you could set a filter for companies located in the DACH region, another filter for companies in the machinery manufacturing, aerospace, or electronics industries, and then another filter for companies with a certain number of employees or a certain revenue range.
Exactly. You can get super specific with your search criteria. And they even give some examples of the specific filters you can use. Like you can filter by company size, by revenue, by job titles, of key decision makers, even by keywords that appear on their company website.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. So you can really hone in on those companies that are the most likely to be a good fit.
Exactly. And once you've applied all those filters, the tool generates a list of companies that match your criteria.
So you basically have a ready-made list of potential customers who are already pre-qualified based on your ICP.
Exactly. And from there, you have a few options. You can export that list to your CRM system. You can save it within Dealfront Target, or you can dive deeper into each company's profile to learn more about them.
Okay, so that's method number one. What's the second way to identify ideal customers using this tool?
The second method is really cool because it leverages the power of artificial intelligence. or AI for short.
AI, huh? So this is getting even more high-tech.
Definitely. It's all about letting AI learn from your past successes and then use that knowledge to identify similar companies that might also be a good fit.
Okay, so how does that work in practice?
Well, you start by importing a list of your best, most successful existing customers into Dealfront Target, and you label that list something clear, like ICP customers. Then you go to the AI tools section of the platform and choose the company list segmentation feature.
Company list segmentation. So it's going to analyze that list of your best customers and try to find other companies that are similar, right?
Exactly. The AI tool looks at all the key characteristics of your top performers and then scours its database to find other companies that share those same traits.
So instead of manually defining your search criteria, you're essentially letting AI do the heavy lifting for you.
Exactly. And then the tool recommends that you save those newly identified similar companies to a new list, ready for your sales and marketing teams to start reaching out to them.
That's amazing. So you're essentially using your past successes to power your future prospecting efforts.
Exactly. It's all about working smarter, not harder.
All right, so we've talked about how to define your ICP and how to actually find those companies out there in the real world that match your profile.
Right. But now the big question is, what do you actually do with that information? How do you turn those potential customers into paying customers?
That's where the rubber meets the road, right?
Right.
We've got to activate this ICP and make it work for us. Exactly. And the sources give some really good guidance on how to do just that. The first step, they say, is all about research and qualification.
So we're not just blindly reaching out to every company on our list. We need to do our homework first.
Exactly. You need to go beyond just knowing a company's name and basic details. You need to really understand their specific pain points, their current challenges, and who the key decision makers are within the organization.
So we're talking about doing some digging, maybe looking at their website, their social media, any news articles or press releases about them.
Exactly. And you also want to look for indicators of intent. Like if a company that matches your ICP has recently visited certain pages on your website, that could be a sign that they're interested in what you have to offer.
So it's about being strategic and prioritizing your outreach based on who's most likely to be receptive.
You got it. Okay, so once you've done your research and you have a good understanding of your potential customer, what's the next step?
Well, then it's time to start reaching out, right? But the key here is to develop really tailored outreach strategies.
Tailored, meaning personalized and relevant to each individual company, right?
Exactly. You're not just blasting out the same generic message to everyone. You're taking the time to craft messages that speak directly to their specific needs and challenges.
And I'm guessing this is where all that research you did earlier comes in handy.
Oh, yeah. Big time. You're using all those insights you gathered to personalize your messaging and make it as relevant as possible.
So instead of saying, hey, we can help your business, you're saying, hey, we know you're struggling with X and we have a solution that can help.
Exactly. And they also recommend using a multi-channel approach to outreach. So that means not just relying on email, but also using things like LinkedIn, phone calls, even direct mail if it makes sense.
So it's about being creative and persistent and finding those different touch points to connect with potential customers.
Exactly. Okay, so let's say you've made that initial connection. What happens next?
Well, then the focus shifts to engaging those potential customers and nurturing those relationships over time.
So it's not just about closing the deal as quickly as possible. It's about building trust and demonstrating that you're a valuable partner.
You got it. It's about creating value in every interaction, whether you're sharing helpful content, providing updates, or just checking in to see how they're doing.
And I guess it's important to remember that not every lead is going to be ready to buy right away.
Oh, definitely. Some leads might take weeks, months, even years to convert.
So you need to have a good lead nurturing strategy in place, a way to stay top of mind and continue providing value even if they're not ready to buy today.
Exactly. And that could involve things like sending them targeted email campaigns, inviting them to webinars, or sharing relevant case studies.
Basically just staying on their radar and showing them that you're a resource they can rely on.
Exactly. Okay, so we talked about defining your ICP, finding those ideal customers, reaching out to them, and nurturing those relationships. But how do you know if all this effort is actually paying off?
That's a good question. We need to measure our results and see if this whole ICP strategy is actually moving the needle.
Exactly. And that means tracking things like how your ICP-aligned companies are responding to your outreach. Are they engaging with your content? Are they requesting demos? Are they moving through your sales pipeline?
So it's about looking at those key metrics and seeing if you're seeing improvements in your conversion rates, your sales cycle lengths, your overall ROI.
Exactly. And they emphasize that this whole thing is an ongoing process. It's not a set it and forget it kind of deal.
Right, you need to constantly be analyzing your results and refining your ICP and your targeting strategies based on what's working and what's not.
Exactly. It's all about continuous improvement. Okay, so let's circle back to those goals we talked about at the beginning. More targeted marketing and sales, better lead quality, and increased efficiency. What kind of real-world result can you expect to see if you implement this ICP strategy effectively?
Well, the sources are pretty optimistic about the potential benefits. They say you can expect to see significant improvements in a whole bunch of areas.
Like what specifically?
Well, for starters, they say you can expect to see much higher conversion rates because you're focusing your efforts on the leads who are actually a good fit for what you offer.
Right, so you're not wasting time on leads that are never going to go anywhere.
Exactly. And that also means you can expect to see a shorter sales cycle because those qualified leads are more likely to move through your pipeline more quickly.
And a shorter sales cycle means you can close deals faster and start generating revenue more quickly.
Exactly. And then there's the whole efficiency angle. Because you're being more strategic with your targeting, you're also being more efficient with your resources.
So you're getting more bang for your buck, right?
Exactly. And they also talk about the impact on customer relationships. When you're focusing on the right customers, the ones who are a true fit for your business, you tend to build stronger, more mutually beneficial relationships.
Right, because both sides are happy. The customer is getting what they need, and you're getting a loyal customer who's likely to stick around for the long haul.
Exactly. And that leads to higher customer lifetime value, which is huge for any business.
And then, of course, there's the impact on growth. When you have a clear understanding of your ideal customer, you can start to replicate your successes in new markets and segments.
So it's not just about growing within your existing customer base, it's about expanding your reach and finding new pockets of opportunity.
Exactly. And finally, they talk about how this whole process of defining your ICP and tracking your results gives you a ton of valuable data that you can use to make better decisions across your entire organization.
So it's not just about sales and marketing, it's about using those insights to improve your product development, your customer service, everything.
Exactly. It's about becoming a more data-driven, customer-centric organization.
Okay, so it sounds like defining and using an ICP is a pretty big deal. It's not just a nice to have, it's a must have for any business that wants to grow and succeed.
Absolutely. It's the foundation for everything else you do.
So for everyone listening, the challenge is to take that first step, right? Start defining or refining your own ideal customer profile based on everything we've talked about today.
Exactly. And as you're going through that process, really think about what makes your best customers so great. What are those unique characteristics that set them apart?
And here's a final thought to chew on.
Yeah.
What seemingly small or overlooked characteristic of your top performers might actually unlock a whole new segment of equally ideal customers that you haven't even considered yet.
Ooh, that's a good one. There might be hidden gems just waiting to be discovered.
Exactly. And who knows, that one little insight could lead to your next big growth opportunity.
And on that note, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. We've talked about the what, the why, and the how of defining and using an ideal customer profile.
We've gone from theory to practice, from broad concepts to specific tactics.
And we've seen how this one strategic framework can have a huge impact on your sales, your marketing, your customer relationships, your overall growth, everything.
So for anyone who's serious about taking their business to the next level, defining their ICP is the place to start.
Absolutely. It's the foundation for success in today's competitive market. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you.
And until next time, keep diving deep.
And keep those ideal customers in mind.